proletariat. But then one might come back from falling idealistically in love with some girl or woman or whatnot, and then one's crude friends would say, using the other language, not the language of love, which Harold understood very well, and talked, wrote in that language of idealised love, which he always did. And if you look at his poems to Antonia, for example, now, you know, they have the idealised view of love, but in those days, depended which side of the vocabulary you were on, you'd come back, one would come back. I remember this happening very well, both to other members of our group and to myself. I'd come back from some romantic weekend in which I knew I'd fallen in love forever, possibly fatally. And then someone would say something like, "Did you get your Oggins?" Which, there is no word uglier than Oggins. "Did you get your Oggins?" And so, do shut up, you filthy-minded lot, I'm not staying there. "Oh, come on, Henry." And they'd talk for the moment in that language. "Oh, come on, Henry. Did you get your Oggins?" "I'm sorry, I'm not open to this style of discourse." And I'd give a little, you know, whatever it is. So I think the answer, it isn't a proper answer, the only answer I can conceive of, is the shifting plates, the tectonic plates of one world, the rough world of the homecoming, and the inner world of idealization, of love, of the mystery. That's what I felt Harold's extreme short-sightedness helped cultivate, this extraordinary sense of mystery.
Now, you don't mean short-sightedness in the metaphorical sense,
no,
but in the actual physical.
In the actual physical sense. I think he mostly detected women by scent, frankly, like some wild beast. And I know Vivian, who is often neglected in talking about Harold, and I do think it's only fair to say that she was...
Vivian Merchant, his first wife.
Yes,
and
was an extraordinary muse to him. I remember looking at them once and writing, not the greatest poem ever written, but I wrote the following lines. I wrote, "Who taught you contrariness, mazy ambivalent progressions, or to disguise your watery margins with simple rectitude of speech and dress? Who knew I would come lumbering after?" And I always felt that about Harold and Vivian, that now she was there, now she wasn't, now, and she played this game of smoke and mirrors brilliantly. And she was there, and then she wasn't there, and then she was somewhere else. And she was a marvellous muse for the kind of woman you found in old times and in the homecoming.
But also a night out where she's the prostitute.
Absolutely.
Where she's able to embody something fractured and completely shattered. Somebody who doesn't know who they are, and who is longing for identity, but has somehow got locked into this behaviour, this repeated, desperate behaviour for connection.
And it's worth saying, tell me if you agree, that he's one of the greatest writers for women of the 20th century.
I can't tell you how many number of actresses who have performed in Pinterland nightly in our readings have confided to me that very thing, that they thought he understood. And of course that's a somewhat controversial statement, because there are people who deride him as an anti-feminist or a chauvinist.
Nonsense.
But the people who've actually worked on these women's roles feel very differently in general.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's a great writer for women.
And human beings of both sexes have blind spots. And the fact is that many of Harold's women turn out to be fully self-possessed, to be sexually confident, to be unafraid, or at least willing to match a man head-on. And many human beings, like Ruth, like Emma in Betrayal, like Kate, most mysteriously like Kate in Old Times, who appears to be weak and then at the end of the play flips both of them over onto their backs and crushes them. And Harold is writing about the power, the true power that women have when they're willing to do what he tried to do as a writer, which is look at life from behind the mirror, at the real truth of things, and to own their true power, and not do what politicized people sometimes do, which is push their true power away in order to stand in a
Absolutely.
What do you call it? In a
spotlight of
oratorical
ideological...
An ideological assumption.
You know, something I think that is worth...
To be human is not to have an ideology, it's to be free of ideology.
I'm so glad to say that, because it ties in with this rather daft question about Harold's political son. He was political,
yes,
but it was his life, not some intellectually assumed stance. Later on, people put pretty labels on it, but he was always, as you have said, the same man. But I think...
He was not a party joiner. He was not an ideologue.
No, he hated the fascism of ideologues.
Injustice and totalitarianism and the imposition of strictures on
fascism, in fact,
on writers and artists.
Yeah, but you know, I think it's worth saying, although it's been said many times, that one of his great contributions to theatre is to make it aware, make people who go to theatre aware that language is not used for communication a great deal of the time. It's used for jockeying for position, for seizing an advantage, for defending one's own internal and external, look at the caretaker, external territory. One lives in a world in which one is constantly under threat. You never know who's behind the door, and you have to defend yourself all the time, emotionally and physically. And until one realises, I think, that the words, which are so essential, of course, in Pinter's plays, much more preciously worked than in many playwrights' plays, nevertheless, the most important part of his plays are the silences and the pauses suspended from those words.
What is that phrase that was assigned to him? Well, I think he actually said it himself in an essay, something to the effect of the two kinds of silence, and one of which is when there's a torrent of words spoken.
That's very interesting.
You know, and yes. Then, of course, then there's a sheer silence. And another phrase, I think, was something to the effect of the more acute the experience, the less articulate the expression.
That's a marvelous phrase. Marvelous phrase.
Am I correct in thinking that was from one of his essays?
I don't know that, but it sounds. I mean, it carries a lot of weight.
But do you know what I mean about the suspended from every good play are the populated silences, the inhabited pauses, the actual world they live in. So plays are only written like that because of the economies of publishing. Actually, plays are like three-dimensional pop-up books that kids have, and you open it up and you're in the dragon's cave, and there are the words, and below it is the world in which people inhabit. Pinter was so aware of that. And so his language, you know, I know everybody knows this, is not used just for communication. Yes, I like a cup of tea. No, it isn't. It's bobbing and weaving and jostling for
Well, we have the language, and then we have the silence that follows, and it's in the resonance of the silence that, if there is a point for the language, where it emerges.
Yeah, quite right, quite right.
Did you work with him on landscape, and was there any sense of collaboration on a script that you ever experienced with him? Or was landscape as completed as any other play when you received it?
Monologue.
I mean monologue, I'm so sorry, monologue.
No, it just arrived, and there it was, and it was complete, and it was very interesting.
Did you understand it straight away? Did you want to talk to him about it? Because actors have the famous story about Alan Ayckbourn in the second production of The Birthday Party, asking Harold, what does this mean? And Harold saying, mind your own business, mind your own bleak business. But it's the most natural thing in the world for an actor to want to ask the author about something. Do you have any memories of that kind of conversation?
No, we didn't. We didn't. I remember though at all, because he'd written it in a lingo. He'd written it so.